Hello there, YouTube. Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast YouTube channel. If you are watching live or otherwise, smash that like button. Go ahead and subscribe and turn on alerts because you see, even though you may be used to us going live at 1 o'clock every day, sometimes we change up the time for various reasons, usually related to my lack of planning and or poor scheduling habits. But if you have alerts on, you'll be like, oh, snap, they're going live at noon. Craziness. Perfect time for your lunch break. So turn on alerts, et cetera, et cetera. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, May 26th. If you are listening to the podcast in audio form, if you're watching on YouTube, it could possibly be Wednesday, May 25th. We're going to continue on with our win total discussion division by division. We have done the AFC North and the AFC East. And today we'll do the AFC South, a rare pivot from the AFC East for Tyler Sullivan, aka Sully. You're going to be hitting up the Colts and Titans instead of the Pats and that crew. What's up, buddy?
I like it. I like shaking it up, Bill. It's not bad. How you doing?
I mean, do you ever feel like? I mean, I guess you don't because you have like 3 gigantic Patriots banners behind you. But like, do you ever feel a little typecast as the Patriots guy? Like you want to like, hey, look, I want to spread my wings. Okay, I'm not
a little bit, but it's not like I'm, not the besmirched breach before last season, but it's not like I'm like the Bengals guy where it's like.
No. It's just, I mean, you are. It's like a quasi dunk. Like it is true. Like people are like, hey, like, can you just want to cover the Panthers? I'm like, no, I'm not really. In fact, nah, not at all. Like I don't want anything to do with them.
Like outside of like maybe the Cowboys or something like that. Like I mean, this is a pretty good,
Patriots pretty good beat. Yeah,
pretty good beat to be typecast to. So I'm not really going to complain too much.
Yeah, and like again, like my interest in me for like radio hits and stuff goes way up when the Panthers are good.
Yeah,
it's just like like you're close to it. It's like I live like 2.5 hours from the Panther Stadium. Like I'm not even really like I'm closer to. I can get to the Washington Commandos before I can get to. Like it's faster to get to the Commandos than it is to the Panthers. But anyway, I digress.
Just depends on how I'm not particularly super close to Gillette either, and depending on when you get there. I went to the Garth Brooks concert last weekend, and it took me forever to get there.
How was that? How was that show?
It was a good time, really fun.
Are you a country guy, or is that like a lady?
Yeah. Come on now.
Really?
Yeah. I like country.
Okay.
Come on.
I mean, look, I grew up on Garth Brooks. So I mean, I got no problem with it. I mean,
it was fun.
He's
got him last second. wasn't super planned, but
probably wasn't super cheap then either.
No. It was. But they were given to us for face value, so it wasn't like it was anything super crazy. Yeah, friends of friends.
That's great.
Yeah, it was good.
Did he encore with Friends in Low Places?
Yes, I mean, of course.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think? Wouldn't you get? I mean, speaking of typecast, like I mean, I guess you're making like hundreds of millions of dollars a year, or whatever. I mean, or like $50 million a year, whatever Garth Brooks makes. I mean, he has to. I mean, is he a billionaire? He has to be like kind of close. He's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, July was pretty packed. I think he did it for 2 nights too, so it was, that's a nice little ticket there.
Net worth. What would you guess his net worth? Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. What would you guess his net worth is? No, he's not a billionaire. Not
a billionaire. So 250 million?
400 million.
Okay. All right.
There's also his salary is 90 million per year. So like maybe do about
Not bad.
Yeah, if I was making, I guess if you're making $90 million a year, your lifestyle is such that you can't really save much more than
Right.
10 to 20 million a year. Like,
I'm sure the billionaire life is great, but how much different is it from that? I mean,
right.
You're still living pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh, I forgot he's married to Trisha Yearwood. Whew. Man, they are rich. Anywho, we'll stay in the South. And we'll talk about the AFC South for today's podcast. We will begin with the Indianapolis Colts, the favorite to win the division, although essentially a coin flip with the Tennessee Titans. They have the exact same win total. We'll get to the Titans next. Maybe Indy just got maybe it was alphabetical. I don't know why Debo picks what he does. I guess they're slight favorites to win the division. 9-8 record in 2021. Of course, that 9-8 record marred significantly by a Week 18 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which eventually had Carson Wentz shipped out of town because the Colts missed the playoffs. All they had to do was a 17-point favorite on the road was go win in Jacksonville. They couldn't do it, and Wentz got shipped off. They bring in Matt Ryan, and then this past week, just as sort of a kick in the old Wentzoids, they also signed Nick Foles, who has a statue outside of whatever Philly's jail slash stadium is called these days. The link. I can't remember anyway. Now I'm like forgetting what Philly is called because I was being sarcastic. They also had Stephon Gilmore, Rodney McLeod, and brought in Dennis Kelly as well they brought in several guys on the offensive line. The goal being like last year they had Eric Fisher starting at left tackle. And that just clearly didn't work out. So they brought in Matt Pryor, they drafted Bernard Raymond, and now they have Dennis Kelly in there as well to try and solve the left tackle position ahead of the season beginning. Indianapolis lost Carson Wentz, of course, in a trade, but they got some nice picks back. Marlon Mack signed away, departing as a free agent, and Jack Doyle retired. Rock Ya-Sin also traded to Las Vegas. They brought back in Yannick Ngakoue as part of that deal. They are over under 9.5 with the over juiced to minus 125. Sully, what are your, I know, we did I think you're maybe less high on Matt. Are you you were in the medium rare on Matt Ryan camp, maybe?
No. I was high on Matt Ryan. I'm less high on Tennessee's quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. I just can't imagine. It's not you can't really do this from year to year because, again, the schedule is different. The rosters are different. Circumstances are different. But I just very basically look at this and say, Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz, it's more than one game better. It's at the very least one game better, one more win than they were a year ago. So when you look at it just like that, I mean, I think that the Matt Ryan impact is going to be pretty significant for them. I even put them as a sleeper kind of Super Bowl team, their long shot, when we were talking about this earlier when I was last on the pod too.
That's right.
I like them in the division to win this one. And if you look at the schedule, I mean, what a soft opening that you can have. Back-to-back games against the Texans and Jaguars to begin your season. I mean, that is as soft of a landing zone to get things situated before you take on a team like the Chiefs in week 3. That, for me, that is a great way for them to get that momentum going. And then you look at the rest of it. I know they do have difficult opponents against the Chiefs. You get the Broncos, even maybe Philadelphia in the Raiders and all that. But overall, you're facing the Commanders, you're facing a Steelers team. There's a lot of areas here where you can stack up wins for them. So I like the over.
Yeah, I would lean towards the over with him as well. I think you could maybe make the case that you can make the case that a better bet might be to win the division at plus 100.
Yeah,
I think it's even money. Now the downside is they could win. So they could win 9 games and win the division this year. I don't think that's out of the question. Go 9-8, win the division. Tennessee's not as good. Maybe get a tiebreaker right there. You could also win 10 games and not win the division. So there's some danger here for sure. Look at the top part of their schedule. You mentioned open up at Houston and Jacksonville to start. I mean, my Indianapolis spidey sense just kind of gives me pause. If this were Carson Wentz starting, I would pencil them in to lose one of these 2 games.
Yep.
I do think Matt Ryan, look, if they get the left tackle position solved and that offensive line is healthy throughout most of the season, like this is one of the best offensive lines in football. Quentin Nelson is a perennial All-Pro, and Matt Ryan, I think, will be. People are really underestimating just how bad the protection was for Matt Ryan the last few years, and like how little the defense wasn't good, so he was constantly behind schedule, constantly having to throw, constantly under pressure. Now, of course, this defense might take a step back with Gus Bradley running it versus Matt Eberflus. I think that's entirely possible. So I don't know. I just look at it, and those are 2 things that I think about. And I don't think it would be crazy if they lost to either Houston or Jacksonville to start the season, just because Indy seems to do weird things like that.
Yeah, no, that's certainly smart to point out there. But the other thing that I think is worth noting too is, I mean, you can probably say some of their hardest games of the season against the Chiefs, against the Chargers, against the Philadelphia Eagles, possibly all those are at home.
Yeah.
Like that is something that you do need to notice there. I mean, at Denver is going to be difficult. At Vegas is going to be difficult. Even going to New England could be difficult depending on how the Patriots turn out this season.
They're 3 hardest I don't think you count divisional road games because you have those. They exist. I mean, at New England, at Las Vegas, at Dallas. And you can maybe quibble and say maybe at Minnesota. But those are all kind of winnable games. I don't think you're in that. If they're not a good football team by November, or they're like playing like an average football team by November, they could absolutely be touchdown dogs to Dallas. But other than that, it would be pretty shocking if they were more than like 3 or 4 point road dogs in any game this season.
I was just going to say that 3.5 is probably what you're looking at here, which is pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, they're 8-point road favorites in week 1 against Houston. So, yeah, again, we know how that's worked out for any of the past, but that's a great point about the home and the road splits. And they can thank Carson Wentz in part because they didn't make the playoffs, easier schedule. I think I would have to go over on this. If I look at it and I have them. So let's say they go, what do you think, 3-1 after the first 4 weeks?
Yep, sure.
Okay. With a loss to KC. Yep. And maybe they beat KC and maybe they lose at Jacksonville. Like, who knows? I just 3-1, I think 2-2 worst case. Their next 4 games, Broncos versus the at Broncos is a tougher. Sorry, I missed that one.
Yeah,
that's one. That's the top. That's probably the top road game. They could be if they're 3-1, they won't be huge dogs though. If they're 1-3, they will be. Mm-hmm. Versus Jacksonville, at Tennessee, versus Washington. I mean, I'll give them the split with Tennessee just to be conservative. So, what, 5-3 coming out of that second stretch? Then at New England, at Las Vegas. I think that's fair to split those. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the final 3 games before their week 14 bye, versus Philly, versus Pittsburgh, at Dallas. So we got them at 6-4 with those final 3 games. Think they hold serve against Philly and Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
All right. So 8-5 going into the week 14 bye. Like that's you're feeling if you got the over 9.5 and they're 8-5, and I feel like that's kind of conservative. They could be 7-6.
I think so.
Yeah. But like you feel like they should win at least 2 of their final 4 games at Minnesota coming out of the bye, not an easy one, versus the Chargers on the day after Christmas, and then at the Giants and versus the Texans. Like that feels like 2-2 to me, and that gets us to 10-7.
Right. I mean, you're almost halfway there with just and again, I know your indie spidey senses are tingling at the start of the year, but you just look at how this season is bookended with this team at Texans, at Jaguars, and then you finish up at Giants versus Texans. I mean, those are 4 wins, very winnable games there at the tail end of the beginning of your season right there.
If they happen to go 2-2 in those 4 games, then you're probably losing this over.
Yeah.
I think you need to go 4-0 in those games. Unless you got a surprise at Denver versus the Chiefs or at Las Vegas,
And they get like you said, the Vikings game in Minnesota, sneaky difficult, but you are coming off the bye too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I like the over here. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but if this team if the defense doesn't take a huge drop off with Gus Bradley, and look, there are some questions about Gus Bradley as a defensive coordinator. I absolutely am here for it. If Matt Ryan, I think Matt Ryan should counteract that as an upgrade at quarterback. And so I like the over here. I think I gave it out on Bill Barnwell's pod. But as Bill immediately pointed out to me, maybe there's a better bet on an over-under with an AFC South team. That could be the under on the Tennessee Titans. If you'd like Indianapolis to be a 10-win-ish team, but you're not sure if they're definitely going to win 10 games, you can always just take the under on the Titans, who have a very difficult schedule, and who are, look, I mean, they lost A.J. Brown this offseason. They traded A.J. Brown to Philadelphia. Julio Jones was released. Janoris Jenkins was released. Jayon Brown, a productive linebacker, signed with Las Vegas. You have Roger Saffold, who signed with Buffalo. Like, so you're taking Rashaan Evans, signed with Atlanta. Like, they added Robert Woods and added Austin Hooper. They drafted Malik Willis. There are Mike Vrabel's teams compete year in and year out. I don't think they're going to crater, but they've also gone 9-7 a lot, or 9-7 a lot. I guess now would be 9-8, but with an over under of 9.5 and the under they don't have the same odds. Under -125. You start to look at this schedule, Sully, and I think maybe there's an easier chance of the Titans going under than the Colts going over.
Yeah, and I would lean the under here too, and you can kind of just ride the narrative a little bit too, because again, Ryan Tannehill is someone who I've talked about on here with you a couple of times. We do feel like he's plateaued a little bit. I mean, obviously the tail end of last season was not great for him. And if that downward trajectory continues, you're going to have to wonder, when are you going to have that conversation of, is Malik Willis going to start to see time? And then you look at this schedule. I mean, what is that? Week 9 on that gauntlet of Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincinnati. I mean, that is a murderer's row.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous that is their schedule.
So, I mean, really, you could even say all right, so just listen. All right, this schedule is really hard. I mean, like really hard. So, like, they have their first 5 games and then a week 6 bye, which I don't think NFL teams like. You know, a week 6 bye means you're getting that bye out of the way so early in a 17-game season, and you've got this running back in Derrick Henry who you would love to give like a mid to late season break for because he's been dealing with injuries. And so they get the Giants at home in week 1. Then they're at Buffalo. I think 1-1. I think most logical people would say 1-1. Raiders at home, at the Colts. So we're at 2-2, and then at the Washington Commanders. I mean, I'm down enough on Washington where I'll give them 3-2 going into the week 6 bye. I think 4-1 is entirely possible if they won in Indianapolis, but I think 3-2 is probably that's following right along with what the Vegas lines will be, right?
Yep.
So you're 3-2, and you come out of the week 6 bye, and you're hosting the Colts. So give them the win if you want. That's 4-2. But like you're saying, week 7 on is you're hosting your chief division rival. You have 2 road games against the bad teams in your division still remaining on the calendar. You also have the Jaguars at home, and then the rest of it is Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, the Chargers, and the Cowboys. That is brutal. Like,
I don't think that there's a harder schedule down the stretch in the NFL, to be honest.
No.
I mean, how can there be?
And the Chiefs, Packers, Eagles, Chargers are all on the road. So let's say you win Indianapolis. We'll give them Houston too, I guess. What we say, 3-2, so that's 5-2. Chiefs loss. And look, the Titans have beaten a lot of good teams. So
yeah, like to their credit, like to Tennessee's credit, out of all of the wide receivers that we've seen depart this offseason, as talented as AJ Brown is, I almost feel like just because of the way that Tennessee plays, they run that offense through Derrick Henry, they may be able to absorb that type of a loss better than a Green Bay losing Devontae Adams or better than a Kansas City losing a guy like Tyreek Hill, just simply of how they run their offense.
Sure.
But it is still going to be a tough road for them. I mean, even though you can cushion that type of a loss maybe better than others by how you play, I don't know if you get into these track meets with all of these teams that we see, I don't know how much Derrick Henry is going to be able to help you there.
Yeah, I forgot to include obviously that they drafted Treylon Burks in the first round.
Yeah.
But it's like, Treylon Burks and Robert Woods is not AJ Brown and Robert Woods. Right. I mean, he's rookie wide receiver. I mean, so of these non-divisional games where it's KC, Denver, Green Bay, Cincy, Philly, Chargers, and Cowboys. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. What do you think the record is in those? 2-5?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if you're at 5-3, 3-2, 5-2, that puts you at 7-7, and then it's then you fill it in with 2 games against Jacksonville and 1 against Houston. So it's like, can you sweep Jacksonville, who should be better?
Yeah,
and beat Houston and you have to sweep Jacksonville and Houston. Is basically going to be the deciding factor here, unless they just really take care of business in some of these bigger games. It's just hard to see them winning in Green Bay. I think Philadelphia would absolutely be favored unless the Eagles take a drastic turn down. The Chargers would be favored too, unless the Titans don't really have this massive home field type of advantage they're going to steal from the Chargers. I wouldn't think in Los Angeles. Denver could easily come into Tennessee and beat them. Mm-hmm. Cincy could too. I mean, we've literally seen it. So it's like not.
And one thing that's worth pointing out here too is, let's just say we get to this Dallas game and they lose and maybe you're out of playoff contention going into week 18. Is that a Malik Willis situation? Do you see, do they just kind of say, all right, let's just kind of see what we have here now that we're out of it? That opens up the door for, the Jacksonville Jaguars to possibly get one on you there too. So when you talk about sweeping the division, there is a storyline in place in that final week where you might even be playing a rookie quarterback just to see what you have.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't win those early games, and again, we're not trying to crap on Tennessee either. I mean,
no, it's just a difficult schedule.
It's a really hard schedule, especially after the early bye and then just a brutal run of games. Like you look at that, that's, I mean, That is eye-popping how tough that is. Like who they've got to play. I mean, it's just a really, really hard schedule. So it's, it's not going to be an easy run for them. We'll both take the under on the Titans, right?
Yeah.
All right. So slight lean over on the Colts, slight lean under on the Titans. As Barnwell pointed out to me, look, if you're taking a bet in May, actually, I don't know if Bill said this, but if you're taking a bet in May, you're better off taking an under than an over, because there are things that can happen to change if Derrick Henry gets hurt in off OTAs, I mean, just hypothetically, he tears his ACL at OTAs, like this number is not going to be 9.5. They lose some offensive linemen, or Ryan Tannehill, suffers some injury, and they have to start Malik Willis the whole season.
6.5. I mean, you could go down 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably 7.5, but yeah, it's not crazy at all. Or the Jaguar, Trevor Lawrence and Davis Mills look great. Taking the over on the Colts, it builds in risk that if something bad happens to the Colts, you can't change that. Taking the under on the Titans, like if something bad happens to Tennessee, you probably got some pretty good value. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, the Texans and the Jaguars next.
Sonic the Hedgehog, you're no match for me.
This is your moment to be the big hero.
Oh, great, the Winter Soldier.
It is my destiny to destroy you.
Work smarter, not harder.
Hang on! That wasn't too bad.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2, rated PG, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I'm not supposed to point out what. Wait a minute. I'm not supposed to point out that that like what our YouTube commercials are on the audio podcast, but usually they're like too good, so I can't do it. So Sonic 2 is streaming on Paramount Plus right now?
Yeah.
Man, like Sonic is like my son's jam.
Oh, there you go. Sweet.
Yeah. So he loves Sonic. So I didn't realize it was already streaming on Paramount Plus. That's another great reason to get Paramount Plus. You don't have to go pay for Sonic into some other thing. You get it, get all the stuff, all the great factors built into Paramount Plus, in addition to Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Also, there's a Avengers reference in there. I'm not sure that that's legal.
Fine.
Anywho, Debo's like, why, man? Why can't you just be a professional? Let's get to I assume that I closed. I switched my browser. The next team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, over under 6.5, under -125. The Jaguars, of course, went 3-14 last year. Finished with the worst record in football and got the number 1 overall pick for the second straight season. Arguably the worst coaching hire in the history of professional football, by bringing in Urban Meyer, firing him mid-season, much ballyhooed, just misstep after misstep after misstep, just comical stuff from Jacksonville. And then there's a whole draft thing where they, of course they drafted Trayvon Walker. There was, buzz that, Shad Khan might force Aiden Hutchinson on him, yada, yada, yada. They also added Christian Kirk, Zay Jones in free agency, Evan Ingram. They signed Brandon Scherf. They spent a ton of money in free agency to try and upgrade everything around Trevor Lawrence. Carlos Hyde was released because Urban Meyer was released. DJ Chark signed with Detroit, at the former potentially stud wide receiver who never really panned out. Miles Jack was released, and Andrew Norwell, another big loss, replaced by Brandon Scherf, but he signed with Washington, which they really just switched places. Brandon Linder also retired. I'm kind of bullish on the Jaguars in the sense that I think, and I was talking to our buddy Bill Ryder about this on his radio show on Wednesday morning. And he's like, who would you rather have, Trevor Lawrence or Kyler Murray for the next 5 years? Or maybe even said the rest of their career. And I was like, pretty easily Trevor Lawrence for me, because I think a year ago, everyone would have said Trevor Lawrence. And now, because of what happened in Trevor, like I've had people say, like, do you think Trevor Lawrence is just broken? Like Urban Meyer just broke him? I'm like, I don't think so. I
don't think that there were like any games. I mean, again, it wasn't like a prolific rookie season.
Don't get me wrong, but it's like the offense was abysmal.
Right. I don't think that it was Trevor Lawrence being terrible. I think it was the entire operation being terrible. Like it wasn't like, oh man, this, like right out of the gate, you just go, okay, this kid can't play. I don't think it was anything like that.
If anything, I think it was the opposite, where it's like you're watching this, Urban Meyer's like, we're going to run for 200 and pass for 200. It's like, well, you're not playing Rutgers, my man. Like, look, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's not going to happen every week. I think they actually did manage to do it one week somehow. But like you would watch Trevor Lawrence, you'd be like, oh, there it is. You'd see like a couple throws a game, or like at least one throw a game. You're like, man, like he has got that special talent, and his skill set and his pocket movement and his ball placement and his accuracy and his ability to use his legs. I mean, I think it was so much on Urban Meyer and on what was around Trevor Lawrence. And then you have this upgraded Doug Peterson, who's a pro's pro. Doug, he's he got the most out of Carson Wentz. Like, this is a guy who got the most out of Nick Foles. And I think Trevor Lawrence is probably the best quarterback prospect he'll have ever worked with. And he's going to get a ton out of it. Now, I don't think they're going to go like 10-7 this year. And certainly having to play the AFC West, just like with the rest of these, the rest of these divisions doesn't help matters. They get the AFC West. They also have to play Baltimore in week 12. Of course, like the rest of the division, they get the NFC East too, which can be good and bad. I don't know, man. I look at this team and I think that, I think they're going to beat Washington in week 1.
I do too.
I think they're going to lose to Indianapolis in week 2. But again, as I've said, I don't think anything's off the table. And then they're probably starting off 1-3 with road games, the Chargers and the Eagles.
Yeah, 1-3, 2-3. What is that? 2-3.
They beat Houston at home.
They beat Houston, yeah.
So yeah, I got them at 2-4, and then they get the Giants. There's 3 straight home games: Giants, Broncos, and Raiders. I kind of feel like they could go 2-1 in there. Maybe that's giving them too much credit.
That's a little too much credit. I'd say they beat the Giants, but I don't know if they're beating Denver or Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about. I'm not 100% sure on that, but
that's fine. All right, so wait, we had them at 2-3, and then let's say we'll give them we'll give them the Giants. So that's what 3-5. Lose at Kansas City, so that's that method, right? What did I miss there? We have them beating Washington, Houston, and the Giants. So you're 3-7 going into your week 11 bye.
Mm-hmm.
And as we noted, the over under here 6.5 with the under juiced. 5.5 feels like a better number.
Yeah.
Ravens coming out of the bye at home. I mean, that's tough to imagine a win. Weirder things have happened. I mean, the Ravens have lost. Weirder things have happened. Tough to imagine a win. At Detroit, at Tennessee. Surely they can get one there, right?
Yeah, you can get Detroit.
All right, so we got them at 4-9. Cowboys at home is probably a loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the Jets.
Yep, I could see that being a win.
Yeah. So 5-10.
6-10
after week 16, and then they close at Houston versus Tennessee. I think they split that too, depending on what's going on with Tennessee.
So you're sitting at 6.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you can take the over 6.5 and expect the Jaguars to win 7 games. Like they could win 7 games.
Yeah. Well, you're expecting them to take care of business against even to subpar competition, like the Detroits, the New Yorks,
they have to win all the games they might win.
Right. And you need to split with Tennessee. Probably.
You basically have to split the division and sweep Houston.
Yeah.
It's asking a lot.
You're asking a lot. And as much as I think that the Doug Peterson, from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson is going to be super impactful to the overall development of Trevor Lawrence, the overall production of this team in 2022, 7 is a lot. Even in a 17-game schedule, that is a tall ask for them. Like you said, I would love that much more if it was at 5.5.
5.5, exactly. 5.5 over 125. I'd probably take 6.5. I'm not pulling the trigger. Like, again, I like Doug Peterson. I think his team will be it'll be much improved and much better coached. If Trevor Lawrence takes a massive leap, 7 wins is possible.
And they're also, and again, when we talk about that,
Wilson had the Jets at 7-10.
And when we talk about the that Jets game, it's a Thursday night in New York, so you are traveling on a short week. That's always pretty difficult there for them as well. So as much as we're penciling that in to be like, all right, that's going to be a competitive game, you are the road team on a short week.
I mean, we gave them all their easiest games. It's like at Washington, at Detroit, at the Jets. It's not easy to win road games in the NFL, much less for the Jaguars. I don't think this is a 1-16 team though, or a 3-14 team. But this is not a last place schedule. It doesn't feel like.
No, it doesn't.
You know what I mean? Or it's not even
that's just the powerhouse that is the AFC West too. I mean, your last place teams in that division are the Raiders, and that's not going to be.
You got to play that whole division, but remember they.
Right, I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
but
because the Ravens finished in last in the AFC North last year, tied with the Browns won the tiebreaker because they both finished 8-9.
Mm-hmm.
So the Jaguars get stuck playing the Ravens, who really could be the favorite to win that division, or should be in my mind. It's like that's like your bonus last place game. That kind of sucks if you're them.
Yeah, and a lot of teams have been dealing with that too. It's very similar, like with the Broncos on the schedule as well. Like not so much with the Jaguars here, but those third place finishers that are playing the other third place finishers now are not playing a third place team. They're playing a sleeper Super Bowl team with Russell Wilson and the Broncos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whoever got the Broncos is like their third. It's like, wow, thanks.
Yeah,
like I got the Broncos. How fun. I would probably, if I would want to monitor the Jags and see how they did throughout the offseason and see if there's like a chance that maybe the Jaguars can take a leap, because like I don't think you need to take I wouldn't want to take this under, I don't think.
Yeah, it's kind of sitting right where you don't want it to, really. I mean, like we said, if it's a game lower or a game higher, you can make a little bit of a stronger case either way, but the 6.5 to me is just, it's a little too much, because we just kind of mapped it out there. You're sitting at 6 wins. Who knows if Lawrence balls out one week or there's an injury, like you say, opens things wide up.
Yeah. And it's a manageable final stretch. And look, like you never know, like that, 2 years ago, the Cowboys, it's like, Dak Prescott's hurt, down for the season. The Cowboys are terrible. And suddenly that's home against the Cowboys is like your favorite in that game if you're Jacksonville and you're playing well. I just think like I could be talked into the over 6.5 plus 105 after seeing some stuff this offseason. I cannot imagine this is going to like get juiced to the over. Not with this team and not, like it's. I don't think it's going to go down, but it's definitely not going to 7 or 7.5. Like that would be be crazy unless Lawrence is just, obliterating the offseason.
Right. And you can't, and like I said earlier, when we were talking about Tennessee, that week 18 game, you don't know who's in at quarterback there too. So, I mean, like that is something to take note of, but obviously
Tennessee could also be playing like to win and in for the playoffs.
I was
and then all of a sudden
it could be either side of the coin there. They could be out of it and they're throwing Malik Willis in there to see what they have, or it's a must-win game because they're trying to make it into the playoffs as a wild card team or whatever, or playing for a division title and they're going absolutely all out against Jacksonville. They're going to get obliterated.
I mean, look after your week 11 bye, you have 7 games. 3 are at home. It's the Ravens, the Cowboys, and then the Titans in that final week of the season. I mean, it's just a tough. If you're not at like 3 by the time you get to that bye, it's just going to be tough to get there. So be wary of the Jacksonville Jaguars, but maybe monitor. We'll see how they do. If they start look like they might take a step forward, it's an interesting team to look at. The Houston Texans win total coming in at 4.5 after they went 4-13 a year ago. I mean, we mentioned with the Colts, they brought in Marlon Mack. They brought in Jerry Hughes. They brought in Mario Addison. They also signed Kyle Allen at quarterback. Obviously, they traded away Deshaun Watson, and they were able to. Who did they draft? They drafted They drafted Derek Stingley. And how am I completely blanking on their second first-round pick?
It was Stingley, and of course I'll forget it too. It was I can look it up real quick.
No, no, you shouldn't have to do that. That should be my job. I just completely blanked out on who they took. Oh, Kenyon Green.
Yep, there you go.
15th overall. They also grabbed Jalen Petrie in the second round and John Mechie III in the second round early as well, before coming back and grabbing Christian Harris, linebacker, 75th overall. So I mean, they had a ton of early picks, and it looks like they got guys who could be impact players. Like Stingley. I mean, Stingley could be an absolute monster and could improve this team significantly, but he's also a rookie cornerback who had great tape his freshman season and then struggled with injuries and had COVID years. There's explanations for it. I think Stingley could come in to be a stud right away if he's healthy and if he's given the proper coaching. And you would think Lovie Smith would be a good spot there. Of course, they obviously swapped coaches as well. You look at the Texans' schedule; they're 8-point dogs against the Colts. So I mean, you think the Colts win that game.
Yep. It's a tough first month.
Yeah. At the Broncos, at the Bears, home against the Chargers in week 4, and at the Jaguars before a week 6 bye. Are they 1-4 or 0-5, Sully?
I mean, best case scenario, you're looking at 2-3 at the very, very best case scenario there, beating the Bears and the Jaguars.
They could beat Chicago and Jacksonville on the road.
Yeah. I could see that happening. I could see it more. I could see them beating the Bears more than I could see them beating the Jaguars, just because I think that the Chicago hasn't really surrounded Justin Fields with anything, and the Jaguars are surrounding Trevor Lawrence with a new coaching staff that we think is going to be much better, from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson. They've spent big over the course of this offseason. They're getting Travis Etienne back, first-round pick last year.
I forgot to mention Etienne with the Jaguars. Good call.
So, I mean, going into the bye, you're feeling really good if you're at 2-3.
If you're at 2-3, if the Texans are at 2-3, you feel like you're winning this total.
I'm excited about Davis Mills. I thought he was, I was obviously watched him, intently when they were playing the Patriots last year. He was balling out. He was taking it to the Patriots. And that was, kind of the first one where you open your eyes and say, okay, might be somebody that they can build around here, at least for the immediate, maybe not super long term, but somebody that you can experiment with over the next season or two.
Well, I think keeping Pep Hamilton was huge too, because you have this offensive coordinator who's had success, like he was with, just the quarterbacks that he's worked with have succeeded when he's been around to help them, prep and train and develop. And so that makes you think Davis Mills could be an above average quarterback in the league. They bring in Kenyon Green, so he's probably going to go. It depends on how things shake out, but I think he will compete with Titus Howard for the right tackle position. Although if I had to guess, Green and AJ Cann, who they signed in this offseason, will play the guard positions, Titus Howard at the right tackle and then Tunsil at the left tackle. Like, that's not a terrible offensive line.
No. And so if you look at it, like, let's just say best case scenario,
really hard, you can be like, this Texans offense could be pretty good.
Yeah, not terrible.
Not pretty good. Sorry, this Texans offense could be more intriguing than anyone's going to give them credit for.
Right. They could probably be the most surprising, just because the expectations aren't particularly, super high. But if you look at them 2-3 going into the bye, there are 2 more wins that you could see on the schedule. The Giants possibly, and then the Commanders later in the year. But right after, you still got the Raiders, the Titans, who, again, I think at that point in the season, still obviously going to be very much in the thick of things. Philadelphia, if you got to sweep the Jaguars, I think. I think that's really what it falls into. If you want to get 5 wins,
you got to sweep the Jaguars. That's right.
And one of the
you could also, now look, you could, it wouldn't be that crazy if Houston beat the Dolphins in Miami, or if they beat the Browns at home, especially if Deshaun Watson isn't playing.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to mention is we obviously don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson, but the fact that this is coming so late in the year, Cleveland, on their schedule, it does expose them to a loss. If they had Cleveland within the first 6 or first month of the season, you'd be like, okay, all right, well, maybe, if you get a 6-game suspension here or something like that, that's something that we've talked about potentially, just as a random guess for Deshaun Watson.
Right.
You're like, all right, but the further that game is later in the season, the more likely Deshaun Watson's going to be there, which, again, if you're Deshaun Watson going up against the Texans, I think you're going to get his best punch.
Yes. If you get Deshaun, man, it's almost like they did that on purpose. Like Deshaun Watson revenge game after the suspension. Yeah, I think it's that Giants, Commanders, Dolphins, Browns stretch of 4 games in November and then early December that's going to decide whether they go over or under this total.
Yeah.
2-3 is kind out of the gate too, by the way, for a team. Like
extremely kind.
Yeah. And then at Raiders, Titans at home, Eagles at home. Maybe you could win one of those. And so you're at 3-5. I'll give them the Giants win just to kind of be curious. I'll give them a 2-game win streak against the Giants and the Commanders. Actually, I guess that gets you to 5, doesn't it? Wow. If you beat the Bears, Jaguars, Giants, and the Commanders, you just have to find one more win after week 11. The problem is it's like Dolphins, Browns, maybe with Watson, Cowboys on the road, Chiefs at home, at the Titans, Jaguars. It basically comes out of that week 17 Jaguars.
You need to have one of your opponents, like, I forget what week it was, but that random game against the Bills and the Jaguars last year, where it was like 9 total points, and you just have to have a what is going on with Kansas City type of game. Like what Patrick Mahomes didn't do anything. Like it just has to be one of those rare.
Lovie Smith's defense is really just confused Patrick Mahomes today, guys. Didn't see that coming. Yeah, I mean, I think let me look and see on Caesars what the also never mind. So I asked a dumb question about Caesar's name. The Texans are over 4.5, just even juice. I mean, I wouldn't want to bet the under because I think the roster is improved on both sides of the ball, and there's enough chances where they could pull off wins here. But I wouldn't want. I just staying away from this one. I think. I mean, you see it all the time where teams luck into 5 wins. Like it's not that crazy for a team to go out there and they'll try hard for Lovey. I think they have some better players on defense. Again, they have an offense. If Davis Mills but you're basically like Jacksonville. You're banking on Davis Mills taking a fairly substantial step forward. The problem is at least with Jacksonville, you can pin it on Urban Meyer and say this is a former number 1 overall pick who we all universally regarded as a top prospect who just needs to bounce back with improvement in coaching. Whereas Davis Mills sort of has status quo with Hamilton, but he also like Lovie Smith doesn't exactly inspire a high octane offense.
But you're also talking about, like you said, a first overall type of prospect,
right?
As opposed to a former 3rd round pick in Davis Mills. I mean, there's a reason why one went in the 1st and there was one that went in the 3rd. Again, they both could be great. It could happen, but you're asking a lot for a guy in Davis Mills to make that leap. As much as I'm excited to see what happens, it's going to be difficult for him.
Yeah, it's probably for me, it's a stay away until I see the Texans. Let's see the offseason and get some verifiable, positive information. Or again, if Watson is suspended the whole year, I think that changes things because, you would have that opportunity against Cleveland. And, as you pointed out with the Jaguars and the Colts, they get the Titans on December 24th, late in the year. It's possible that the Titans are very bad and that Malik Willis is playing there. And then that's a potential Texans win, it's possible the Colts are sitting everybody in week 18.
Right.
The Texans could win their final 3 games.
It's possible. I mean, I'm not taking that to the bank when
circumstances have to
you got to play the, not play the storyline, but you have to kind of play out the season in your mind and say, okay, this is how, if you think the Colts are a division favorite and you think that they're already locked up and they're in their playoff position, like you said, they could be resting everybody if a team like, if the team like Buffalo already has the number 1 seed locked up. They already have
also just locked into the 4th seed,
Yeah, you're just like, okay, we're gonna pack it in. Jonathan Taylor's gonna see 0 time on the field because he's ran 300 touches over the course of the season already. Yeah, that helps you a little bit.
Yeah, I think those final 3 games is what would steer me away from the under because there's a lot of stuff out of your control. Whereas even if you lose the first 5 games of the season and you're 0-5 going into your bye, you could still beat the Giants, the Commanders, and then get Willis, beat the Jaguars at home. Not that crazy of an idea. And then get the Colts, playing, all scrubs in week 18. So that you wouldn't feel like you made a bad bet on the under if that's how they get to week 16 and they're 2-13 or 2-12, right? You don't feel like you made a bad bet. Is that right? 2-12? No.
I also don't hate, again, I forget how long Caesars keeps up the season win totals, but if it's still up there at the week 6 bye, and like you're saying, it is at a 0-5 or anything like that, that might be time to, see what that number is.
3.5 over under, right? Because they've missed 2 of those possible wins. Yeah, that's a good point. I hit that with San Francisco last year where it was 8.5 wins and they cruised over it, or maybe whatever it was.
Yeah.
That's a good point. The Texans get to week 6, 0-5, maybe their win total is 3.5, and you feel like or 2.5, whatever it is, and you feel like there's a couple chances on here where you can steal something. I like that idea. All right. That's it for the AFC South. Actually ran a little long today. My apologies, Sully.
No worries.
Yeah. Great stuff as always. Follow him at Tyler Sully on Twitter. Read his stuff on CBSSports.com. Watch him on CBS Sports HQ. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with more win totals. For Sully, I'm Brinson. See you guys later.